Jay?
So, tons of decks out from M21. Do you want to start with exciting or still good?
You tell me, man.
All right.
Let's go everywhere. We got to talk. We got to cover it all. There's a lot of decks.
All right. So, the first deck I saw when I was perusing through some of these decks was the winner of the 627 Standard Challenge, Tom Mimp, with a Sultai ramp deck, and I saw the second card in the list, and I was just like, darn it. Patrick said, I hope Ugin isn't just the best. Here we are. Ramp, Ugin, and Casualties of War, so pretty spicy at the top end.
Maybe you could use the word spicy that way. I personally, I'm not sold on the deck that has 4 Growth Spirals, 4 Uros, 4 Hydroid Crassus, 4 Arboreal Grazer, 4 Nissa. Its big twists are it adds new and exciting card Ugin, new and exciting card Cultivate, and then the spicy part that you're describing is that it's yet another 3-color ramp deck that splashes black for Casualties of War.
Yeah, spicy. Like
This is a mild spice. This is a mild spice.
You never know how they're going to get you. Like they might.
This is a discipline list. I'll give you that. This looks like a list of somebody who does their homework. They do their push-ups. Their vegetables. They're in it for the long haul, and they're ready to do some healthy stuff. Not to the format, but for their win rate. You know.
Yeah, but look at it like this, Patrick. There's all different things that can happen here, right? You might hit a second turn Cultivate, in which case you can go Nissa into Hydroid Crisis. Or you can use some other accelerations, maybe not the second turn Cultivate, maybe like a third turn Cultivate, and then, just get somebody with a Casualties of War. You have to like kind of lounge around for a turn until you can Ugin them. But I think that this deck's ceiling is so high. Second turn Cultivate is really powerful. I'm excited to be able to maybe do it.
Third turn Cultivate's not too bad.
Third turn Cultivate is really good unless you've ever played a second turn Cultivate. In which case, a third turn Cultivate is just like old hat. It's like when you're playing the Mutate deck and you've gone like first turn Arboreal Grazer, second turn Greathorn. Every other draw that's not that is boring by comparison. So this is the equivalent. I mean, it's almost the direct equivalent of that. I think this deck is... Some version of this deck is probably going to be a here to stay, capital H, capital S, possible capital T.
You can't tell me that this deck of 14 4-ofs and then the 2-2 split of Island and Swamp, you can't tell me that doesn't turn you on.
I'm in love with that. Are you kidding? It has exactly the correct number of swamps to get on like basic searches with Cultivate so that you can...
Same with Uro.
Yeah, it's like literally just splashing these dubs. How great is that? Tom Mimp, however you say this is...
Tom.
It's
Thom Imp.
Thom Imp.
Yes.
Is a deck designer after my own heart. This is the kind of person who back in the year 2000 would have said to me, hey, Michael J., I heard you like searching through your library. I do, Tom. What do you think about the 4th Vampiric Tutor? And I've been like, well, if you tell me to do it, then Dano Mahoney Schwartz won't be able to take credit at Nationals.
I don't know anything about that. What I do know is that this deck looks prime for them to just put some sort of a freaking Valakut, only this time it's in green for no reason.
Oh, yeah.
And that's it. That's the thing. And it counts as a basic land. Let's go. I think Ugin, it's a great card to ramp into.
So, just to go like 180 degrees, right?
Okay. It's not a great card to ramp into.
The quarterfinal match between this player was against the player who finished 8th in this tournament, JPSN54. And I gotta say, JPSN54 is like, if not the hero we need, the hero we deserve. This deck is...
You literally say that every time somebody shows up with an Owl Seed of Life's Bounty.
No. Hear me out on this one. JS and 54 didn't get the memo that they could play M21 cards, and in fact, didn't get the memo that they changed the companion rule and still made top 8. This deck is just the deck from 2 formats ago, but weirdly...
Luris is still good in this deck.
Yes. This deck, as you know, this was one of my favorite decks in the
I do know
2 formats ago. I would never shut up about it. But the thing that's super weird to me about this is you're playing a Luris deck. This is like literally just like legal Luris main deck, 1 Luris in the sideboard. 13 of the other sideboard cards make sense. 1 Barrier Breach. How does this? When can you bring the Barrier Breach in? Doesn't that break the rules?
What? No, it doesn't break the rules. You're talking about of Luris?
Yeah,
you sideboard in the Luris.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't always, because in the matchup where you want Barrier Breach, like it's when you're playing against a Yorion deck, the pot, like it's not like you can really win grinding them out. Like Luris is just not big enough against them. It's too slow and it's not big enough. They're just going to overpower you. But if you can actually cold 3 enchantments, like you can actually swing the game. The theory. So
I will say, if there's one thing I don't like about this deck, other than the fact that it's a deck from 2 series ago that top aided this
sort of. It's a weird version, right? Like, who plays Ginger Brute in this deck?
Oh, no, people play Ginger Brute.
Okay, I guess, but...
It has evasion. You can put a lot of stuff on it. The thing that I don't like about it on it... So, all kidding aside, 3 Glaring Aegis makes no sense to me.
You would play 4?
You have to. It's one of the only cards that you can actually put into the graveyard. And I know that sounds weird, but the way that you do it is you put Glaring Aegis onto your L-Seed of Life's Bounty, tap one of their guys, sacrifice the L-Seeds of Life's Bounty to give a guy protection from their blocker, then put the Glaring Aegis from the graveyard onto that guy, tap another guy, and then that's how you get through 2 colors of blockers. And I know that sounds super convoluted, but you can't get cards into the graveyard.
That makes a lot of sense to me. That seems to me like the kind of play that you're like the sequence that you're going to have to know to be able to play a deck like this.
Yeah, because Glaring Age is actually one of the only ways that you can interact with their side of the board. So, like, not having 4 seems like a bigger oversight to me than the Barrier Breach that has a theory that you... I'll buy it. But I'm really happy to see that a deck like this is still competitive. I was going to say sleeve up, but I mean like virtually sleeve up a version, see if I can still get it swinging. But I do think that he is the hero that this format deserves.
Do you think Healer's Hawk is the right additional one?
No, I think that, it depends. Healer's Hawk has evasion, which is good, but I don't even know if it's the best 1/1 lifelink that you can play outside of L-Seed of Life's Bounty anymore. Like, this deck is the kind of deck that can easily get a high enough life total from, just having all these lifelink guys, having Luris, and then just like pantsing them up with, various kind of buffing cards like All That Glitters that you could just start making angels.
You're talking about the Speaker of the Heavens, huh?
The new card.
Yeah. Speaker of the Heavens, the 1/1 Vigilance lifelink that has tap, create a 4/4 white angel token with flying. And you can only use it if you have at least 7 life more than your starting life total.
Yeah.
And only anytime you can play a sorcery.
So, yeah, that I think that card is one of the cards where...
It makes Ginger Brute kind of spicy.
So, like, I don't know. Like, obviously, the format is not mature. Like, these cards have been legal to play digitally only for a couple of days, like not even a whole week yet. But there were a whole ton of decks that weren't Yorion decks in the last 2 cycles that were not very good at fighting other people's creatures, right? So there were a wide variety of white weenie, white green, mono green kind of decks. Even I would say like green blue mutate outside of just the shark, right? That they are very poor at interacting with the opponent's creatures and utility creatures. any of those kind of decks can easily fall behind against like the wrong combination of light flinkers, and then just all of a sudden be overwhelmed by angels. So I don't know if those kind of decks are going to be real viable in the new format. A lot of things are changing, but if those kind of decks remain even like high tier 2 in popularity, I think making 4/4 angels is probably better than attacking for 1.
What do you think about Selfless Savior? Do you think you just don't have enough creatures?
In this deck?
There's not enough creatures?
No, I mean, it doesn't... Like, I think like this deck wants to either overwhelm you with lifelink or, get a ton of pants on evasion, and he doesn't do either of those things.
What about Seasoned Howlblade? The new, it's the 1 and a white 3/1, and you can discard a card, tap Seasoned Howlblade, it gains indestructible until end of turn.
I'm not real big on that guy just because he costs 2. Like, I don't know.
Okay.
I think you really want to get your first guy and then get the pants going.
You probably do need to stay, a beat ahead of them.
So
I could buy that.
So you were saying Luris in the main deck. I don't know.
Well, you board it in.
So here's
Maybe.
You don't board it in. Same tournament. Telsakau, 11th place.
Well, hold on. Before we switch off, there is one more I wanted to ask you about in this deck.
Sure.
Is there any argument to be made about Defiant Strike? It was reprinted recently, and just target creature gets +1/+0 until on a turn draw a card.
I think that's a really good card relative to some of the other stuff that you might play, but I don't think that this version is only playing 2 God's Willing, and I think God's Willing has more application here. I don't know. I mean, I really think of Defiant Strike in combination with Season of Growth, but Season of Growth is already helping you out in that way. So I'm not sure. If this were like a feather deck, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I don't think so. I don't think I'd Defiant Strike.
All right. Very reasonable. The other one was Ranger's Guile. Ranger's Guile, is that just a worse God's Willing? I mean, it's a little different, right? Like Hexproof is probably in context a little bit worse than Protection from the Color of Your Choice, but not completely. Plus, +1/+1 can matter sometimes.
Yeah, I think that you use God's Willing a lot to just force it through a single color of blockers. I think that's the most common thing. Because, this deck is not, unless you just get an overwhelming life total advantage, which you can, right? You just get, Alseed or Healer's Hawk with all the glitters and, a bunch of other pants, then you can do that. If you don't have that situation, call a spade, the cards aren't very powerful in this deck, right? There are a bunch of 1/1s for 1 and pants, and you can totally fall behind against things like, I don't know, a Shatter or a Shatter of the Sky, not a Shatter of Artifacts, right? Or and
you're not that good at catching up.
No, you're pretty bad at it, right?
Yeah.
So especially with your Luris costing extra 3, you're pretty bad at it. And the thing is, even if you have that engine going, usually decks that can shatter you probably have something better to do than you attritioning for 1/1/1 per turn or something. It's just not that impressive.
So you're mentioning the 11th place list, which is a triple main deck Luris deck. Talk to me about this exotic build of Cauldron Familiar Witch's Oven.
So I think this is an exotic build only because it's new, and I think that the world is going to move towards this build. The reason for that is, first of all, Luris is already pretty good with, just cards that might be going to the graveyard. It gives you another little jimmy jab you can do with your Cauldron Familiar. But most importantly, if you can play Archfiend's Vessel, which is a new uncommon card from M21, out of the graveyard, you are doing it. Archfiend's Vessel is a 1/1 for B with lifelink. That's its starting values, right? It's pretty okay. But it has the additional text, when Archfiend's Vessel enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, exile it. If you do, create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying. So you can play Archfiend's Vessel, kind of contend, keep your life total healthy against beatdown decks, trade, send it to the graveyard with your own stuff like a Witch's Oven or a Village Rites, and then if you've got Luris, boom, instantaneous bad guy Baneslayer.
And presumably, you want to have the Luris' main deck because you just don't think you can afford the tempo hit. To say nothing of how much you really kind of want the Reaper and the Devil. Because I assumed that Call of the Death Dweller, I mean, it's a fine card, but you could live without it if you knew you were going to have Luris every game. But if you actually have to pay double for Luris, then you kind of don't necessarily want to.
Yeah, I think that paying double for Luris is just, it's not good enough versus like the trade-off of not getting Mayhem Devil. You did just, highlight Call of the Death Dweller. I will say, Call of the Death Dweller getting back Mayhem Devil is shockingly effective. You put the
Death touch
counter on it, that guy just kills everything, no matter how big. And there's no shortage of ways to get sacrifices on in this deck. Obviously, it's got
that is a great combo.
That's really powerful. So, I think this is a deck. I mean, obviously, this has been a competitive deck for a competitive kind of macro strategy for a long time. I think this might be one of the standout decks because that Archfiend's Vessel, Luris of the Dream Den combination it's filthy.
Dude, I love the Village Rites, by the way.
Yeah,
I love the Village Rites and as a 4-of. Oh, yeah. I think that this card was never very good at 2, but man, can a lot of 2-cost cards get good if you make them only cost 1.
What I really like about Telsacow's version is how deeply they lean into it, right? Like, Claim the Firstborn, Spark Harvest, Village Rites, Witch's Oven, like we haven't seen decks that, I mean, obviously Village Rites is new, but like for Spark Harvest main deck, this is a different build than we saw before. And I think part of the reason is you just want to get Archfiend's Vessel into the graveyard, right? So all the ways you can do it with, parity-ish.
Can I ask a kind of a stupid question?
Probably not stupid.
Dude, would it really be so bad to play an Obosh in your sideboard? There's not a single even in the entire main deck. And the only evens in the sideboard are the 4 Agonizing Remorse. This was clearly an Obosh deck at some point.
I mean, that is not a stupid question.
Dude,
I think it's actually
good.
Obvious you should do that. And the Agonizing Remorse can just become some kind of duresses or something else, and it's probably okay.
Yeah, I bet you could just change the 4 Agonizing Remorses into, like, some more other stuff. And even if you don't want to, even if you're like, no, Agonizing Remorse is the only card that does this, fine. Don't get Obosh in that matchup. You just don't get to claim him as your, like, if you board in Agonizing Remorse, then you don't get to claim Obosh as your companion. But that's kind of the state right now. It's not like, okay, so what? Right now, you just don't get the free Obosh.
I mean, I don't even know how that's possible. Like, I think, like, those 4 Agonizing Remorse can easily become, like, some combination of Duress and Soul Guide Lantern, and you pick up all the functionality. I mean, how much does it matter when you make them discard a creature?
That's a lot. It's always Uro.
Yeah.
You want it, that's your dream, is to hit Uro.
It could be Urion, too. I mean, like, people are just main decking so many Urions now. So I guess that matters. I guess I respect that, but, like, just getting free Obosh is...
Either way, you could start by putting Obosh in the sideboard, see how you like it, take it for a test run. And in the event that you like it more than the amount that Agonizing Remorse, like in the event that in the matchups where you're going to board an Agonizing Remorse, you would have liked the free Obosh, you can explore other options.
All right, dumber question. So you claimed yours was... Oh, no, never mind. I already solved it. I was going to say Gigantha, but the Lurises actually break that, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah. I don't know. I like Obosh better anyway.
Yeah, Obosh is a better card in this strategy than Gigantha, which I think, why there's a real restriction there. But I think this strategy is going to be one of the important ones. It seems so good to me.
I think so, too. Yep. Totally agree. So, dude, Garrick Unleashed. You called it. Garrick Unleashed put up some solid finishes as a role player in some of these mono green decks. Like, for instance, Mogged second place had a mono green deck, and it's another one of these, questing beast, pelt collector, growth chamber guardian, gem razor, voracious hydra, stone coil serpent, just lots of monsters, right? It's the kind of mono green deck that you'd expect like Cedric Phillips to play, except it's a little shorter on Yorvo, Lord of Garenbrig. And instead of having the whole trample type of sub theme with your spells, there's Primal Might. X in a green, target creature you control gets +X/+X until on a turn, then it fights up to one target creature you don't control. There's 2 copies of that.
2 and 2. 2 more on the sideboard.
Good point. And then its Planeswalker package is 2 Garruk Unleashed to go along with 3 Vivian Arkbow Rangers.
So, a lot to unpack here, including from the new cards. I think Primal Might is awesome. I think the really underrated part about Primal Might is if you want to, you can pay it for G. Right? You can just G it up. The guy gets +0/+0, but it still will fight somebody. So if you've got a bigger creature, you can win that way. It's a hyper-efficient way to remove a creature for a mono green deck.
That is pretty good.
Obviously, the times when it's also a Howl from Beyond or whatever, it's actually better than that. It's +X/+X, right? Are also awesome, but...
Well, sort of. It's a sorcery, which is a lot worse than an instant.
Yeah. I don't know the name of anything that is this ability, so...
No, I agree. I think the Primal Might looks pretty good. In particular, it's really interesting to fit as a finisher with stuff like, for instance, Stone Coil Serpent having trample. That's a pretty good move. Same with Gem Razor. And then Primal Might setting up fights is always exciting with Questing Beast.
Yep. So
that even if you're in a spot in which, your back is against the wall, you can just for sure take something down if you need to.
Yeah. I like this deck a lot. I am curious as how there are no ram throughs in the 75. Like, I understand that there's 2+2
lack of trample creatures. I don't know. Is that really so bad? How many trample creatures do you even have? Like, if you just got the serpent and the gem razor, that's not like it's that much, right? I guess you have voracious hydra. Yeah, I guess once you have voracious hydra, it's a little hard to turn down at least a little of that action.
I just feel like ram through is it's when it's good. First of all, you don't have to side it in all the time, right? There's like 2 more Primal Mights. The only reason that I bring it up is because Zvi Moshowitz was playing a mono green deck, faster than this version, really like an hyper aggro version. Would not have had time for cards like Vivian Arkbow Ranger and Garruk Unleashed. But he said, I've got 15 cards in my sideboard, only 4 of them matter. And that's I'm taking that from one of the greatest deck designers of all time. So
there's no way Occam Adversary doesn't matter.
Fair enough. Occam Adversary is an awesome card if you think that there's going to be other green decks in the room, which there probably will be these days. So this card is
I do agree with B, though, that Ram Through is very underrated.
But it's only 2 mana, right? If you're playing against green.
Oh yeah, the Occam. Yeah. It's also another Death Touch creature for your setting up your fights.
So it's awesome for setting up fights, but against green decks, especially those that don't have very much creature removal, which is most of them. They pretty much have to throw a guy in front of it.
That's why it's so sick when you Gem Razor, because that's the curve, right? Like your opponent plays like a Paradise Druid or whatever,
yep.
And then you play Occam Adversary, and then on turn 3 you play Gem Razor and you have them in the lock, right? Like it's a 4/4 trample, reach, death touch that when it hits your opponent, draws a card. Plus, if they even had some enchantment, you would get it, but they don't. But like a 4/4 death touch, trample, reach, the Ophidian is pretty nice.
That's insane.
And it's hitting you on turn 3.
Other card that I think is missing here is if you're going to go this direction with 23 land, 4 Castle Garenbrig, very mid-range cards like Garruk Unleashed and Vivian Arkbow Ranger. Don't you think there's like, wouldn't you want the Great Henge in the 75?
No.
No?
I would want it to be right to have that, but I don't think it's right. Yeah, I don't know. I love the Great Henge, man, but I just don't. I don't think that's what it's about right now in this particular list. I think this deck is too fast and aggressive, and I don't think that. Like, I think you in matchups where you would board it in, it randomly gets destroyed by stuff that that they weren't even trying.
Yeah, you're right. Like the Great Henge excels against other people who, if they didn't actually have Gemrazor, like the other 60 cards in their deck, you're like, oh yeah, Great Henge is sweet in this matchup, but they happen to just randomly have Gemrazor because it makes their guys big.
God, I would love that card to be right, but
I like seeing Kogla the Titan Ape. We were big buyers on that card. I'm happy to see that card here. Seems like you would be good.
Yep, I'm a fan.
Maybe against goobers who think that the Great Henge is the good big card. Kogla is going to punish them.
What do you think of the Scavenging Ooze situation, man?
Scavenging Ooze seems like the best green card in M21 if you peruse the deck lists.
That's what I've been wondering is why, like, to me it seems like I would play 4-main deck.
The Scavenging Ooze really, really rewards you if you can get them to like trade their cards for your creatures, like whether it's creature combat or removal against creatures, which I think is a lot of the matchups. It's also pretty good on the curve. I think you're right. What do you want it more than? Growth Chamber Guardian, I hate to say, is, I guess it's your engine here. It's only
sort
good,
of. It's fine.
There's no good way to cheat with it. It's fine.
Yeah. I could personally, I mean, maybe it just turns out to be sick, but I don't know. I don't think we necessarily need Yorvo either. I think that once you're playing Garruk and Vivian, Yorvo starts to lose a little bit of value.
He gets
that's
very
one
big.
That's one of your two oozes right there.
Yeah.
I do think you'll keep the whole Chamber Guardian package. I think I think you want to play just 3 right
There's
here.
no 3 Growth Chamber Guardians. That's not a thing. But it's funny. I think that there are many games I think where Scavenging Ooze is going to be bigger than Yorvo,
Me too.
Which is hilarious.
Dude, eventually people are going to figure out how to combine Yorvo with the new Celestia Winding Constrictor Conclave Mentor.
Yeah.
That's where, or Scavenging Ooze with the Conclave Mentors, that's when things are going to be rocking.
That sounds like a deck list. I think that's
not that far off, man. I mean, there's 4 Paradise Shroud already. If you get some dual lands in here,
there's enough. Also, there's a card that's like G1. I'm sorry, white 1. Put +1/+1 counters on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, you'd have to be like really in for the counter theme. I think part of the issue though is that at this point, this mono green deck's card quality is pretty high.
It's
right?
excellent.
This is just a deck. Like, there's literally no loose cards in this deck. The whole deck is like above average cards, like well above average. So that's why, like, playing an engine card like that, 1 and a white, put a +1/+1 counter on all your cards. I think you got to be like you got to have more synergy than just the 1 Conclave Mentor to get your money's worth, given how much you can just play nothing but great cards.
Yeah, there is something substantial missing in the sideboard, though. I just realized.
What's that?
Ugin, but not Ugin the Spirit Dragon, Ugin the Ineffable. This deck needs to... I think this deck needs like some sort of a Desert Twister, get out of jail free card. What do you
Against
think?
what?
Against first of all, I guess it can kill planeswalkers by fighting them with creatures, but I think it lacks that angle, I think.
Dude, Questing Beast, man, that goes after planeswalkers.
Yeah, any kind of combating stuff you can do, but don't you think like there's just something missing? I think that's what I think I would be satisfied with.
Dude,
that.
There's like 27 things missing. It's a mono green deck.
They're not really all that missing. It has got Gemrazor to fight artifacts and enchantments. It's got Primal Might to fight creatures. It's got it's probably got a lower, faster curve than almost most of the decks it's playing against. Right? I just think it needs something to like match up against someone who's going to be playing, powerful permanents.
You need to establish control.
Now I'm thinking about this more and more, and I'm like, their 8-cost Ugin's going to beat my 6-cost Ugin all day, right? Like that's maybe you just have to aggro them.
Yeah, I think that instead of sideboarding in Ugin against those people, you may want to consider things like either Shifting Ceratops or Heroic Intervention.
I was thinking Shifting Ceratops and Heroic Intervention are very good in those cases. Man, Heroic Intervention is going to get its money.
Yeah.
Permanents you control. If they go to Casualties of War they go to like whack your Garrick, hit your Castle Garenbrig. No, sir. Permanents I control.
So what do you think of these new Jalrail Mulvani Recluse decks? There's a whole bunch of these, like Lampalot's third place list.
I don't understand it at all.
What? No?
So I want to tell you where I'm coming from.
Okay.
You explain it to me. All right. So this I get. Turn 2, Jalrail. Turn 3, draw my card. Play Teferi, bounce your thing. Trigger. Right? I get that. This deck, Lampalot's deck, has, to my recollection, only Growth Spiral and Shark Typhoon to draw cards on the opponent's turn at all.
Wait, correct? Why do you need to draw cards on the opponent's turn?
So that I can get my money with Jalrail.
Yeah, but you can also get your money on your turn.
Yeah, I want to get lots of money.
You got to draw 2 cards on your opponent's turn to get to double up on the money.
Yeah, I know. That's why I want you to explain the Jalrail to me. That's not what this deck is built for.
You're not trying to do that. You're not trying to pair 2 copies of Growth Spiral or 2 copies. Like, you want to kick your Shark's Typhoon. You don't want to cycle both of them for nothing. And you want to play your Growth Spiral as soon as you can. You don't want to save one to get another one.
So
Jalrail is partly because if you ever make a token at all, you're way ahead. You don't have to make a second one. If you ever make a token, you're way ahead. And then if you have Jalrail as an option for doing the ultimate, man, dude, do you realize it's not even like when you activate Jalrail with you have you surprise play a 1/1 Shark Typhoon, and then you have Jalrail, and then you can attack with the 1/1, and they don't block, and then you boom, hit them for like a boatload.
So this is my thought process. I love cards like Jalrail. Listen to my example. I'm like, you play Jalrail on turn 2, play Teferi on turn 3. I understand how that works, right? Like, I love that. I like this. I'm totally a buyer on everything you said. Getting 1 token activation out of Jalrail is so much rate, right? It's so free. In love with it. The only thing I'm thinking of is this is a deck with Wraths and Elspeth Conquers Death, high-powered Planeswalkers.
Yeah, like Teferi, Master of Time, that lets you play a Jalrail, get a token immediately with no additional investment of mana. Plus, it lets you draw a card for 0 mana on your opponent's turn, so that if you have a Teferi, every Shark Typhoon and every Growth Spiral gets you a 2/2.
Well, yeah, so I guess there was a third card that let you draw cards on the opponent's turn that I just missed. But I don't understand why Jalrail, as a defining card, is better than like the version that came in 4th, Jake Helm's version, which just doesn't have Jalrail in the main deck. I guess still has it in the sideboard. I don't understand why.
I mean, the 5th place list has Jalrail. Like, most of the lists have Jalrail. The real question, like the 9th place list has Jalrail. Like, the 10th place list doesn't. But it just seems like it's an option that a lot of people are adopting in small numbers.
So I like Jalrail. I think it's a great card. I want it to be the right build. I don't understand why it is. That's like my honest assessment. I don't get it.
Wait, okay. Are you on the same page of if you ever get a 2/2, you're way ahead of the game?
Yes.
Okay. So are you on the page of if you got a 2/2, 2/3 of the time, you'd be in pretty great shape because you've also got this incredible activated ability, and who knows, maybe you'll ever make another 2/2.
Sure. It's actually pretty easy to get a 2/2 if you want, right? Like 2 or 3 times. This I can go like turn 2 Jaw Rail, turn 3 cast Uro, right? Draw a card from Uro, and you're ramping, so you're even getting that much closer to the ultimate ability.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, I don't think the real question is drawing cards in your opponent's turn. It's cute that Teferi sets everything up that way. That's a pretty good interaction. But if you just look at the deck, I mean, if you just Hydroid Crassus for 4 mana, and then you get a 2/2 flyer, draw a card, gain a life, and make a 2/2, like, that's pretty good. And then Hydroid Crassus is pretty sweet with Jalrel anyway, because all the counters stack on top of the base power and toughness that Jalrel gives. You know, because Jalrel doesn't set their stats, it sets their base stats. So +1/+1 counters are amazing. Same with Scavenging Ooze.
Oh, that's true.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems pretty dope. But I could imagine that there's other stuff you might want. It's not like this is necessarily the perfect list. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is. But, like, for instance, Jake Helms has Ketria Triome. That's an extra card that can draw cards. You know, and then some number of people played, like Kenrith, the Return King, is kind of like a win more way to do it. But, you know, in theory. And even just cycling. Like, some people play some cycling cards, right? Like Neutralize.
Yeah,
that's sure. One, you know.
Yeah, I just don't see. Like, it's clearly a great card. I'm just not. It's not centered in my head why it makes sense in this strategy of the Bant decks. Like,
does Tarmogoyf make sense?
In like
sometimes your deck just plays a 2-cost card that's like cheap and really good. You know, like maybe the better way to think of it is. You know those decks that sometimes just randomly have like 2 young Pyromancers in Legacy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same sort of a thing. It's like, yeah, this deck doesn't really have any creatures, but sometimes I play a young Pyromancer.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's good enough, maybe it's not, but it seems interesting to me. It's a powerful permanent, and to have that effect for just 2 mana.
Wow. I'm just going through some of
these. It does make me wish I had Opt, though.
Yeah, like, when I saw Jalrel, I was just like, oh, I'm going to play, like, a lot of Opt and a lot of one-casting cost cycling cards.
That's because you're just so obsessed with trying to get the one on your opponent's turn. Yeah. I just wanted to Opt because I want to do it on my turn, because on turn 3, I want to play Jalrel and then also Opt.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay. Chemister's Insight's pretty good with Jalrel if you want to make a token on your opponent's turn.
How messed up is it that you can just, like, Growth Spiral on turn 2 and then, like, play, like, Jalrel and, like, 2 other lands, so you have 4 lands on the next turn, and then you can, like, defend it with Mystical Dispute and draw a card if you had a one-casting cost thing, like an Opt?
Okay, so hold on. All I heard was, how messed up is it that you can Growth Spiral?
Yeah.
So there's other cards, like specifically this blue-red deck. Right, like VTCLA, bring in the blue-red, the style of a bunch of flyers with some spells, a lot of cantrips, but there's some new action here. First of all, you've got Sprite Dragon finally getting a home, and that's a card we've been seeing a little bit over the last 3 or 4 months, but it's got new purpose with its buddy Stormwing Entity from M21, and then the new, some new cantrip action.
Yeah,
Stormwing Entities, the 3 blue, 3/3 flying prowess. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2, and it costs 2 and a blue less if you've cast an instant or sorcery this turn. So very frequently on turn 3, you'll be able to do stuff like play a Crash Through or a Shock or an Opt, and then you play the 3/3 flyer and scry 2, and it has prowess.
Yeah, that's a very powerful new card.
What do you think, man? Frantic Inventory?
Frantic Inventory is spicy. Like, how many times do you need to get the draw 2, let alone draw more than 2?
Well, it's also different. If you don't have to cast the first one, if you get to discard the first one to Thrill of Possibility, then the frantic inventory the second frantic inventory, which is the first one you cast, that second frantic inventory is already ahead of the game.
Oh, that's cool.
You're behind still if you had to actually pay retail. But if you can ever cheat the system, like if you can loot away somehow your first inventory, then the second one gets you a little ahead. Whereas normal, you gotta play the second one just to break even, and then the third one is like super dope.
This deck's got a good number of beacon bolts, 1+1. That's another way to get rid of a frantic inventory.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So I'm not sure on the numbers. I think I would want to play like Brazen Borrower is such a messed up Magic card. I think I'd want to play 4. That's my first thought. Big fan of Brazen Borrower. It's also crazy to me that Crackling Drake couldn't make 4 of here. Like this is like the slow. Crackling Drake deck.
Too slow. What about that? I mean, God, there's like a million different types of Crackling Drake variants for these kind of decks nowadays. I don't know. Like, do you think there's any argument for Experimental Overload, or is it just not close? Like, it's behind Crackling Drake. So, like,
yeah, I think. I mean, I immediately scanned to see if Overload was in this list when I was first looking at it, but I think Overload is. It's also like less consistent than Crackling Drake is in this strategy.
True.
So, yeah, I don't think this version or whatever this sort of family or school of decks is going to go that direction.
I think Experimental Overload makes a little bit more sense in a deck where you care about which card you get back. This deck, all the cards are like so low power, like they're all cantrips or shocks and stuff. Versus if you had a deck that had, you know, some big card drawers, some Shatter the Skies, some cheap removal. Like if you've got a good variety of high impact cards that have specific jobs, then Experimental Overload starts looking a little bit more attractive.
Oh, well, you could maybe do something there with like thrills, frantic inventories, and jump starts to kind of like move around the cards that you want to get in your graveyard, or like discard specialty cards that aren't good in a matchup.
Okay, so that, dude, Chandra's Incinerator, boom, in the 7th place list. Pedro Martinez playing a mono red Cavalcade of Calamity deck. You know that enchantment that whenever a creature you control power 1 or less attacks, it deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. This list is making use of Chandra's Pyroling as sort of another one of those. Just it stacks up all the Cavalcade triggers, make the Pyroling huge, etc. But the spicy part is the Chandra's Incinerator.
I mean, the Incinerator must be great because it's the only card in this deck. I mean, outside of Torbrand, which is, you know, a buff card more than an attack itself card, that isn't a 1-power either creature or creature maker for Cavalcade, right? Everybody else is 1 power.
Yeah, but I mean, like, woo, does this card have a high impact as soon as it comes down?
Yeah, I mean, I like this card. I think that this card is going to see a deep amount of play in multiple formats. I would guess this is not the ultimate home of the Incinerator, but I like that it's seeing some early play.
I mean, obviously it combos with Cavalcade, right?
Yeah, I mean, but I just get the feel it's kind of Winmore-ish, right? Is the Incinerator... Is it better than Torbrand?
Sometimes it's a hell of a lot bigger.
Yeah, but it's also a hell of a lot more expensive. I mean, I
no, it's not. Like, if you just have, say you don't have the Cavalcade, right? If you just have, like, say you have 1 Scorch Spitter and 1 Goblin Arsonist. If you attack, if your opponent kills the Arsonist, you get to play it for 4. And if they don't, you got through, and it's still only 5, you know?
Yeah.
And that's obviously, if you ever have the Cavalcade, you're just like,
yeah, but
rocking and rolling.
That's a different story. But I'm saying, like, even in your example, you could just cast Torbrand and then, you know, for the amount of mana that you have available. I think, like, I think that Incinerator is highly highly, highly erratic for this kind of a deck. It's not particularly on theme. It feels pretty Windmore to me. It's hard to cast. The deck only has 21 lands without some sort of enabling.
I will say, I think you're right. I don't think this is going to end up being the final home. I think this card looks a lot more attractive in decks that have stuff like some face damage cards, some kind of shock. Heaven forbid they make a new Lava Spike or something.
Yeah, like I think that it's really going to excel in formats where you get a really good ratio on your mana. So like even you have a card like Bone Crusher Giant in the sideboard, right? Like that's 2 mana for 2 damage. You're like not getting,
No, you want Lava Spike or Fire Blast.
or what you really want is like Rift Bolt or like Lava Dart or the ones that like you get an insane amount of leverage against your mana.
That's true. If you could just go turn 1 Rift Bolt, turn 2 Shock, you have it.
Yeah. So.
Or Gut Shot, whatever.
Yeah, I think that Incinerator is going to be a big player in Modern. It might not even be a popular main deck card, but I can totally imagine this being like a card that's very easy for red decks to side in, especially against other red decks who are going to have a hard time removing a 6/6, where they're just going to drop it, on any of the ways that you were just talking about a second ago, and it's going to be hard to get rid of it. And like, God forbid you untap with it, and your hand is just like, all of the cards in my hand fit perfectly with Chandra's Incinerator.
Dimir Flash, a new breed of Dimir Flash. The 15th place list by Mistar features a couple new hits, and these new Flash creatures give them enough that they're actually going all out with both. Obviously Slitherwisp is the good one, but they're actually playing the full 4 Brineborn Cutthroat and 4 Cunning Nightbonder now that they have access to 4 Liliana's Standard Bearer and 4 Thieves Guild Enforcer.
So, yeah, there's a lot of new toys specifically have Flash. So Liliana's Standard Bearer is a 3/1 zombie knight with Flash, and when it enters the battlefield, draw X cards, where X is the number of creatures that died under your control this turn. So works 2 ways in this deck. 1, it's just another card with Flash for the theme, right? And then 2, I think this card is a really cool kind of reload ability. So, like, let's say you're largely just a creature deck, right? So you could be putting out creatures, attacking with them, your opponent wraths them, or you can just, like, block or whatever, and your creatures die in combat. Liliana Standard Bearer can just kind of get you back in the game with a good amount of card advantage when you otherwise wouldn't have a tool like that. And Thieves Guild Enforcer is actually quietly one of my favorite cards in M21. I think that obviously when it just comes down as a 1/1 for 1, it's not doing that much, but it potentially has an amazing amount of rate. So as long as the opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, Thieves Guild Enforcer gets +2/+1 and has Death Touch. This deck isn't great at putting cards in the opponent's graveyard, but it could just happen.
A lot of people do that anyway.
Yeah.
But, plus, like, if you ever just can spend 1 mana and kill something with the Death Touch part, that's a whole thing. And then, in particular, using Thieves Guild Enforcer, even if you don't have enough to do full on and you just chump block with it, starts becoming very attractive when you're playing with Slitherwisp drawing you a card and the Liliana Standard Bearer drawing you a card. This deck just really wants cards that are cheap, and it can refill so fast.
Yeah, I think that this deck has some potential. I think like it has the critical mass that you need of cards that are on theme, and I think that it can certainly put folks into like a really bad position, right? Like imagine you're playing against a control deck and you're just essentially playing on their turn, and you've got like Mystical Dispute to mess with them. I think it's good. I'm a little wary about how effective this deck would be if like those big green decks or medium aggro green decks were popular, but we'll see.
I mean, Eliminate's pretty good. It's a pretty good card just in general.
It's an excellent card in general.
And obviously, you're really not having a lot besides race them. if they play with a sufficient amount of fight stuff, it's going to be. I think you're right. I think that could be potentially a little bit of a little scary.
Yeah,
But I think you're going to really need to be riding stuff like Black Lance, Paragon, and Thieves Guild Enforcer for those matchups.
My eyes went to Black Lance Paragon also. I think even more important than the Death Touch on Black Lance Paragon for those matchups is going to be the Lifelink. This deck, while it has cool angles you can play with, can do kind of a lot of damage to itself.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you're in a race situation, you're like, yeah, at some point you might have more cards than you can play, and they've got like a 5/5 with trample, and you're like, how many things can I put in front of that and hope they don't have a trick?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When you're saying like damage to itself, are you saying like just that you just mean that like sometimes you're just going to be stuck racing, right? Like, because obviously, like, I mean, I guess Castle Locklane is a little bit of that, but I think that for the most part, it's really just about the race, you know. And Black Lance Paragon basically being like a lightning helix, a better lightning helix in those matchups is just incredible.
Yeah, it's certainly incredible in this deck.
I know you gotta love for Soul Guide Lantern. But what do you think of Necromentia, the new one, the new Cranial Extraction variant? 1 black sorcery, choose a card name other than a basic land, search your opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name, exile them, they shuffle their library, and then they get a 2/2 zombie for each card exiled this way from their hand.
I don't know. I think that this is a little bit of a counterproductive card, right? Like, those 2/2 zombies... Like, you're gonna have an expectation that they're getting the 2/2 zombies, right? Like they interact with you pretty well.
Well, no, I mean if they get the 2/2 zombie, then they don't have the card in their hand.
Yeah, but like I feel like there's ways to do it that don't involve them getting 2/2 zombies. Like that's all.
I don't know. I think it's reasonable because I think that sometimes you're like, man, I just really don't want them to have Uro or Ugin, you know. But I don't know. It is a card that's chronically overrated, but that type of effect. But
it does a job.
Definitely. It is sweet with unsummon too. Just unsummon the zombie like zing.
Yeah, that's
dude. Alpine Houndmaster, top 16, a Alpine Houndmaster Boros deck. So H Cook 725 gives us an opening salvo for the question of how many Watchdogs and Curs do you play in your Houndmaster deck? 4 Houndmaster, 2 Watchdog, 2 Cur. Love it. Love to see it.
Yeah. So this is a Winota build. So
sort of. It's a soft Winota build.
When I say Winota build, I mean this deck has Winota in it.
Sure.
So, which is a lot of the things that you were talking about last week. So 4/2/2 looks like the way to go initially. You know what I like about this? It produces bodies for you so you can go wide for Embercleave.
Yeah, it gives you extra cards in your hand that you can discard to the Howlblade also. And the Howlblade has the extra role of being a human so that you can actually have some Winota hits.
Well, that's fair enough. I mean, the Houndmasters are human. You can hit those, and they will find you more Watchdogs and Igneous Curs.
Oh yeah, Tajik too.
Tajik is human. Yeah, I don't know. I think that this seems like the initial direction for the Houndmaster decks.
Does it bother you at all the complete lack of there's no removal, there's not really evasion, there's not really anthems, it's literally just tons of donks, like lots of just beat down creatures.
Well, when you put it that way, it sounds way worse to me. I was just like, oh, I like the Houndmaster card advantage, I like the Winota card advantage. I think Tajik is a notoriously difficult card to play against if you're not used to it, right? And anything plus Embercleave I'm in for.
Yeah, I mean, Embercleave is the tricky part of this deck.
So
there was a different list that came in 18th, Slater Raid, was playing both Haktos, the Unscarred, and Kenrith, the Return King, to try to make it a little bit more worthwhile to support a full 4 Winotas.
Well, this is clearly a more powerful build, right? It has more expensive cards, including Haktos and Kenrith, which is a whopping 5 mana if you actually had to cast him. It's also deeper into Winota, right? With like Raise the Alarm for setup. I think that if I had to pick one of the two, I would pick Slater Raid's deck over the 14th place version.
Just really in for Winota?
I just think that if I had to pick one of the two, I think this one has more worthwhile things that might happen for me. That's kind of where I'm kind of, if your objection is the strategy is mostly donks, they didn't cease to be mostly donks in this build, but at least the donks are better.
Sure. There is another. It is another 2 Alpine Watchdog, 2 Igneous Cur list, which I think seems reasonable.
You think that that's where we're going to land then? I mean, I know this is week 0, week 1.
No, but I think it could be. I think that the second one is so much better than the third, and the third one is so much better than the fourth.
Yeah, the fourth I think is very, very.
I'm greedy. I would want to play 3. But I love value too much.
But you could play like 3 Curs and 2 Watchdogs. That's okay.
Good. I don't know. I don't know that I even want to draw the Cur that much.
So here's the thing. The Cur is much worse than other cards you might play a lot of the time. But in a game that goes deep, the Cur is a real threat.
Yeah. But yeah,
it's not as big of a threat as Kenrith, but
I don't know. I still want to just play both. But dude, did you see the black-white control deck? It's another Ugin deck, but this one's doing the whole Yorion hitting enchantments thing. It's Yorion with 4 Treacherous Blessing, 4 Doom Foretold, 4 Oath of Kaya, 2 Elspeth Conquers Death, and it's Yorion's all over the place. 3 Yorion's main deck, with the 4th Yorion in the sideboard. This is a deck that wants to Yorion hard.
Oh, yeah. I think this strategy is pretty cool. I played against this on Magic Arena so far. I think the cards that really make it are like Solemn Simulacrum, and like Burglar Rat, Charming Prince, like all.
You get to play 8 rats too, with 4 Burglar Rat and 4 Yarok Fenlurker.
Yeah. So
and you can blank them with the Charming Prince and use Agonizing Remorse for even more discard.
So you've got a ton of 187 action, and I think most importantly the Solemn Simulacrum, right? Because like that guy gives this deck a completely different kind of angle where you can ramp up your mana to actually somehow get to Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
Totally.
And obviously all this stuff works really well with Yorion blinking.
Yeah, Solemn Simulacrum with the blinking. Also Solemn Simulacrum with the Charming Prince to blink. Or even just sacrificing it with Doom Foretold.
Oh, yeah. I think like the combination of 187 creatures that in some cases like the Burglar Rat are interacting with your opponent's cards, plus the Doom Foretold. Like you can... Like it depends on like obviously what your opponent's playing, but let's say they only have like 1 creature in play, you can go like 187 thing, you're slightly ahead, they're kind of annoyed because it wasn't like that powerful of a card. Then you zinger them with a Mortifier and Eliminate, and then you play the Doom Foretold, and they're actually pretty pinned. Like I think that is an underrated sequence in Standard.
Yeah. I mean, once they get behind it,
this deck will be hard. Wildly unsuccessful if that Rakdos deck that we were talking about with main deck Lyricisp is the popular strategy, because I do not think this deck is good against ovens and cats and and 5/5 demons from the graveyard. I think that.
You can Agonizing Remorse the cat.
Wow, you're right.
That's a start. That's something. And at least Fenlurker exiles, so they can't like just free roll you. It's not a good situation for you, no question.
But they've got real cards that are like just fighting against your main strategy. Like, fine, like they're just keeping pace. They've got like Call of the Death Dweller, and you've got all this expensive investment and Ugin and, all these Yorions. But who knows? Who knows? I think this deck is probably fantastic against, not super fast beatdown creature decks, right? The decks that are all right, I'm not the fastest beatdown creature deck, but I have some value and I have, a lot of angle to me. This deck will murder those guys all day.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe it's just good not having any lanterns, because if you're just going to give up, maybe you just don't waste the space.
I don't know. I think I'd want some lanterns. I like a lantern. I like a lantern a lot. Also, a lantern with Yorion? Come on, man. So much 187.
Value. Dude, Gadrick, the Crown Scourge, making an appearance as a 3-of in the 22nd place list. Ruin 000, packing a Jund Cauldron Familiar Witch's Oven deck. Between Witch's Oven, Trail of Crumbs, Bolas the Citadel, and then, just the random food like Gilded Goose.
I want this deck to play Casualties of War. Right? It's got Dryad of the Ilsian Grove.
Yeah.
It can get up there.
Okay. I mean, Dryad of the Ilsian Grove doesn't really get you there that much faster, right?
It gets you there a turn faster.
It can.
I'm actually not sure why Dryad of the Ilsian Grove is that good in this version, though. What's it doing?
It's just a hard body, man.
You get a little value. I guess you know what? Maybe I take it back. This deck is topping up on Bolas' Citadel. Let's just go in this other direction.
Yeah. I mean, part of it is just Rada Heart of Keld is pretty nice with Dryad, right?
Oh, sure. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
This is a really high on my list of a deck where if nobody's messing with you and they just kind of let you do what you want to do, you're going to do some cool things. They're going to be very exciting to string together.
Dude, I want a Rada so bad. The card looks like that seems like it would be a pleasurable Magic card.
I got to tell you, between Rada and Dryad of the Ilsian Grove, you can kind of cram those two cards together and you get to your Pro Tour winning deck list.
Dude, this format, I think that there's a lot of promise. I think that it's probably not. I don't think it will even take 14 bans for this format to be awesome.
Not even 14.
Not even 14. I think that I think you could do it with 13. I think you could.
I would suggest
150% chance.
But there are plenty of things going on that seem like they might be viable. We've got green decks on top, red decks on top. It's not just blue-green decks. So we'll see.
No. I just mean I would love to. It's one of those ban everything until Necrobones is good, then ban Necrobones.
Yeah.
I'm saying ban everything until Rada's good, and then stop.
Don't leave Rada. All right.
Stop.
That sounds like a perfect place to end it.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped fate.